Superhumanize. Accelerated evolution.
Welcome to Superhumanize and another deep dive into all things human potential. Today, I'm thrilled to have Dr. Judith Orloff join us. Dr. Orloff is a psychiatrist, an empath, and intuitive healer, and the New York Times bestselling author of several transformational books, including The Empath Survival Guide, Thriving as an Empath, and her latest, The Genius of Empathy. As a full-blown empath myself, I deeply resonate with Dr. Orloff's work and the unique insights she offers into the world of empaths and highly sensitive individuals. In this episode, we will explore the concept of empathy as a superpower, how empaths can protect their energy, and the fascinating neuroscience behind our empathic abilities. We'll also touch on the evolutionary significance of empathy and its role in shaping the future of humanity. Get ready for a compelling conversation that blends scientific insights, practical advice, and profound wisdom. Whether you're an empath seeking to thrive or simply curious about the incredible potential of empathy, this episode is packed with valuable information. Dr. Orloff, it is such a pleasure to connect with you. Thank you for making the time to come onto the Superhumanize podcast.
You are most welcome.
I have been following your work for many years now, and it's had a really tremendous positive impact on myself. I am an empath, and I just yesterday, for Quote Fun, took the assessment on your website and answered 18 out of 20 with yes, which makes me a full-blown empath. And like many people, I have been struggling for many decades of my life prior to obtaining the knowledge, such as shared in your work, about what it actually means and how to actually not just cope, but how to thrive with being wired in this way. And I found your latest book, The Genius of Empathy, to be truly groundbreaking, especially with regard to what you are saying, your approach to empathy as a superpower, and that it really can lead humanity and the world into the best possible, most beautiful iteration that is perceivable. And I'd like to hear more about that. I found that so beautiful, to empathy as this transformative force in healing not only self, but relationships and societies.
Yes, I feel that empathy is the force that will heal the world and will heal us in so many ways, individually, our relationships, and the greater global community. And empathy is for empaths, and it's also for people who aren't necessarily empaths, but want to develop more of an empathic take on the world in relationship with others, because empathy is a healing energy. When you're empathic with somebody, you open your heart. And when you open your heart, that creates healing energy around this area and then spreads through your own body and then out to the world. And so it's an activity you want to do every day. Empathy is a spiritual path for me because I listen to it every day. I ask myself, how can I be more empathic with myself rather than listen to the negative voices? How can I be more empathic with my partner or my friends or people I just meet in the market? How can I be empathic with the person who cuts me off? And how can I be empathic even with people who have beliefs that I disagree with? And what does empathy look like? Does it look like being a doormat? Does it look at being in denial? No, it's none of that. It's just an approach where you don't polarize and you're able to at least connect to somebody as a human being. I talk about the namaste effect, where I respect the spirit within you, namaste, but I may not like you. I may not want to be with you again. You might be my ex, so I don't want to let back in my life, but I respect your spirit. I'm not holding on to bitterness and resentments, and I'm not growing old with that weight on my shoulders. I'm able to have more of a lightness of being and try and forgive those who have harmed us, not forgive and forget, you always, you want to forgive their shortcomings, their suffering, their lack of heart, their misguided notions about things, their disconnection with the earth, whatever they're experiencing. It's very sad, and it deserves our empathy, but it doesn't deserve our support.
Yes, Dr. Orloff. And I think that is such a crucial distinction you just made. Empathy does not mean you support something or you condone something. However, you can still hold sacred and with respect the spirit of the other. I really love the way you put that. Now, if we look at the times we're living in right now, the 24/7 news cycle, which is, of course, focused on the negative 99% of the time, where I feel human beings, our psyche, our brains have not been made to be bombarded with negative news all of the time. That first and foremost, that's pretty heavy for most of us, whether we're empaths or not, especially for empaths. We're going into an election year in the US and all that nasty, you can't even call it discourse because it's basically just throwing mud at each other, has already started. A lot of people I know are very emotionally riled up. It's very heavy for them. So how can you, in times like these, when it seems like one is pitched against the other, how can you nurture empathy within yourself so you can, instead of reacting, respond?
Exactly. And you want to create your positive news in your own life every day. You don't want to be totally taken over by the craziness of humanity, because they've been warring forever, millennium. This is nothing new. This kind of treatment of each other is nothing new. Human beings really can't get along with each other. It's sad, but it's true. But you can create your own positive news and show yourself empathy. There's a reason you were born into this time. We need you, and you need to honor your own empathy for yourself and the sadness that you feel, the frustration that you feel, whatever the real emotions are there, you need to honor them and not try and talk yourself out of them, and try and stay in a place of empathy for yourself as you go through this very difficult time. Now, this is a hard time in history. It's probably no harder than a lot of other times that humanity has had, but it's a very difficult time, and we need to stay true to what we believe in. And I wrote The Genius of Empathy to help people develop hope and to stay true to what you believe in. I believe in empathy. I believe in love. I believe in being able to respect people even though you disagree with them. I believe in, if you can, talking to somebody you do disagree with in your beliefs every day so you can get used to it. Most people only stay around people that they agree with. It's a real stretch and a growth to be around people who don't have the same beliefs as you, and get in the habit of that. Don't make it an oddity. It's an important skill to have, to be able to know how to respond when somebody's saying something outrageous or something you don't believe is true. What's the proper way to respond to that? It's not to get into combat with them. No, it's not to get into a confrontation, but it may mean a simple, I heard you. Thank you for sharing that. I heard you. I'll give it some thought. So what you're doing with that simple response is that you're giving the person something, the I heard you. That's part of empathy. I see you, I hear you, and what you say is valuable to me. All right, that's what people want to hear, despite all of the machinations that they go through. Basically, what they want to hear is, I see you, I hear you, I value you. All right, and so even giving that to somebody who doesn't have the same beliefs you do, I hear you, I'm going to give it some thought. And that's it, short, out, no confrontation. But it changes the cycle of how you relate to somebody who you don't agree with.
Yes. And like you just said, Dr. Orloff, to be seen, to be heard, to be valued because you are perceived in a sense, even if you're not agreed with, that is at the core of what a human being desires. And I feel that a lot of individuals actually get so riled up and get so extreme in what they propagate to the outside because they have gone for a long stretch in their lives feeling like they're not seen, feeling like they're not heard, like a child that resolves to throwing a tantrum in its deep desire and need to get seen, to get a reaction, which ultimately just is the desire of a true connection. And another thing you just pointed out, that is really great food for thought. Yes, to become used to being around people who don't agree with oneself. And I think most of us, myself included, don't do that. Yes, I practice reading all kinds of different opinions and news, and I make it a point to surround myself with all kinds of different people. Yet I'm sure I can do even better. And that's it hones the heart. It really does hone the heart.
And the mind. It
Yeah.
hones the mind so you're able to tolerate when you hear things. You have to ask yourself, what motivates people?
Mm.
And I, for one, love to know what motivates people, even though I don't agree with it. I'd like to know where they're coming from, at least so I have a chance of understanding them. At first, it might seem like we have nothing in common whatsoever, and we might not. But when I understand at least how they see it, that gives me a possibility of understanding them. And that's what they want, is to be understood.
Yes.
But it's important to, this is all framed in empathy, and the genius of empathy, these are the priorities, is empathy for yourself, empathy for your family and friends, to better your relationships before we even get on to the global situation. If you want to better your relationships, let's say with your spouse, showing a little empathy instead of getting into arguments is a good start. And it doesn't mean you agree with them. It just means I hear what you're saying and I'll give it some thought. That's the starting place. That's the starting place. And I think what you'll see, you have to experiment with this, is that the other person relaxes a little bit. And you want them to relax. You don't want them to get all riled up. You want them to relax. They want to know that you respect them. And I know that's a lot to ask if somebody is saying something difficult, but I feel totally fine about asking you to do it because we need to create changes. And I think you're longing for loving relationships and more connected to relationships, or even setting limits with relationships that won't work for you. There's some that just won't work. There's some family members you may never get along with, but you don't have to fight with them. You don't have to get into it with them. You could go at a family dinner, sit at the end of the table away from them. Just be gentle with yourself. You don't have to be exposed to certain people. But if it's just the end of the road for you and them and no compromise can be met, then just respectfully be together if you're forced together in family situations.
Yes. And speaking about family, I speak from my own experience. I was never really taught how to have a conflict resolution, so how to repair. I was never taught how to actually, with each other as a team, discuss things that one might not agree with. What was modeled by the adults was always the against each other, the bickering, the fighting. And so I remember as a child, and as a quite sensitive child also, I would go into freeze. And you talked about the empathy for self, which you also focus on in your book. So many empaths, myself included, often, I used to, not anymore, but resort to unhealthy coping mechanisms because I felt so overwhelmed, whether it was, oh, it's just 2 glasses of wine or other substances or some kind of an escapism to just numb these overwhelming emotions I experienced. Could you explain why empaths are particularly susceptible to these behaviors and how actually recognizing the source of these emotions can help us break these patterns?
Yes, it's very common that empaths get overwhelmed by sensory overload. Too many people, too much sound, too much movement, too much chaos, and then suddenly you're on overload and your responses aren't really rational anymore. You're just you don't want to respond on overload. By the way, if you're overloaded, you go take some alone time, even if you're, like for me, the airports are the hardest. It's just so much stimulation, and I will go into the bathroom, and even that, closing the stall and meditating will help me bring it down again and center myself.
Yeah.
And it's important you find these practical little tricks to work with yourself and to be aware of when you're starting to get overloaded. Because if you're not aware of that beginning, then it can develop momentum and turn into a panic attack or something like that. Or you reach out for drugs, alcohol, sex, shopping, food, any kind of addictive behaviors that can numb the feeling of being overloaded, because it's just, you're so desperate. I mean, I know because I've experienced it a number of times in my life as an empath. You're just so desperate to shut it off. It's just too much. It's too much. And then it gets out of control and you don't know to set boundaries with people or take alone time or go out in nature or just look at a little flower or a little butterfly. Refocus your attention on something beautiful and calming, and maybe listen to music and meditate and bring yourself down, rather than turning to drugs, alcohol, and all the addictive behaviors. But it's very common. I work with a lot of people in recovery who are recovering empaths as well as recovering drug addicts and alcoholics. And part of their drinking and using was from just this sensory overload that would be too much. And so they'd pick up a drink and it would calm down. So it's just something to be aware of, and not to shame yourself if you identify with that, but to take steps to learn how to calm yourself down and work with your empathy when it gets overstimulated.
Yes, and I relate very much to what you just shared with us with at an airport, for example, locking the door. If there's a social gathering, a party or something, my good friends and my husband already know if I'm gone, I'm somewhere in a bathroom, locking myself in for 5 to 10 minutes to calm down.
So you in there?
Yeah, exactly that. And so I'm fortunate that I have those who know me really well. They know how I'm wired, and then it has nothing to do with them. And it's just me centering myself again and grounding myself. Now, for people who are dealing with friends or loved ones who don't quite know what to make out of what's this empath thing, and when they want to communicate, look, this is what I need, this is what it's about. What is the best way to communicate to someone who really at the moment thinks, oh, empathy and the need to withdraw or such, that's an alien or even offensive thing to them? How can an empath communicate their needs to someone and make sure it comes across in a way where it's for the best of both?
Yes, it depends on what subject you're dealing with and how you approach it. But my strong feeling is you slowly educate family members and loved ones, that you don't hit them over the head with all of these things you're experiencing and then expect them to understand, because it might be a non-compute for them. And sometimes I give people my book and they read it together with their spouse, or they just read a page together. And you have to make sure that the other person doesn't feel wronged or blamed or shamed. For instance, some empaths prefer sleeping alone some of the time or part of the time. And being able to break that to your partner. You don't want to make it sound like they've done anything wrong. And you want to really tell them you love them. And this is something that you need to try out just to get some rest. Maybe your partner snores or thrashes around, or you don't feel comfortable, want to have more space in the bed, whatever you need. Or you want to have dream time so you remember your dreams in the morning. You have to begin to express it to them and say it's because of your sensitivities that you love them and they haven't done anything wrong. And you need their help in supporting you in this. So you say it in a very loving way. And it's a little hard. This topic, I picked a big topic. It's hard because the non-empath doesn't have the same sleep needs as the empath might have. And so they just want to be together. and they feel lonely when they're not with you. But you need to just open these unusual conversations. And the thing that empaths do that isn't helpful is they keep their needs to themselves, and they just build up. It just, the tension builds up. So either you bolt or you say something you don't want to say. So these issues have to be spoken about. And the need for alone time is very important to talk about with family members. So let's say you're at a family party and you need to go for a walk and just take some downtime outside. You need to forewarn them to say, this is what I'm doing to take care of myself. It's a beautiful party. You're doing everything right, but I've got to go and take a walk. And you say it really nicely. You don't say it defensively, and you don't make a big deal out of it. You don't get into a confrontation. And if they get nasty, they say, what do you mean you have to take a walk? You don't be reacted to that. You said, it's just, I've got to calm myself down because I'm feeling a little tense right now. I need to just take a walk. Thank you for understanding. So you have to be the calm in this, and they will get used to it. At first, it might be a little hard for them. It's hard for non-empaths to get what empaths feel sometimes. So just realize that. It's hard because they have a different perspective and a different sensitivity level. And so you have to be patient with them. And it isn't time to leave all your relationships. That's what some empaths do. And it's not right. You want to, the people you love, you want to educate them. Not everyone's going to understand you. You might have some narcissists. They're your group of friends. They're just going to want to go after you for all you can give to them.
Yeah.
So don't be taken in by that. Always be with people who reciprocate your love and caring. And don't look at anyone as a healing project.
Yes.
You can heal them, big mistake, big waste of time, many years. I tell people this, but they do it anyways. But if you don't want to waste all that time on someone who isn't going to love you, I'm sorry to say, please read The Genius of Empathy and practice the strategies here. Now, what happens? There's a chapter on narcissists, sociopaths, and psychopaths. How empaths relate to them and how to identify them, how to not get involved with them, and how to break up with them. Have to have a how-to manual. Otherwise, it's very difficult. I can't emphasize that. I've worked with patients. They get involved with their soulmate narcissist, and then 23 years later, they want to crawl out of the relationship after the kids, after the houses and everything. And it's very hard, but they can do it. But they have to start over and say no to that person who's toxic. So part of being an empath and empathy is having empathy on yourself so that you can be with loving people and that you can choose loving people, and you know how to not choose the ones that will never give you what you need, even though you might have a wound where you're vulnerable to being sucked into them.
Yes. And that chapter is particularly fascinating to me, Dr. Orloff. I have my own experience with narcissists, and also this desire or the idea, oh, I want to or need to heal that person, and all the energy, all the time that went into that. And it's hard not to get sucked into that if you're still in that vulnerable space. Can you break down briefly to us? I'm witnessing it with a dear friend of mine right now who's separating from a highly toxic narcissistic partner. What draws empaths to get to narcissists? What is so magnetic there?
Narcissists have an uncanny way of reeling somebody in by love bombing them, which means they give you lots and lots of love, lots of affirmation. Oh, I've been waiting for you all my life. You're an amazing person. I feel blessed being around you. Anyways, they turn on the charm really high up. So be suspicious of that if anybody turns it on too much, because that isn't what you really want. Some people are genuinely charming, so I don't want to block out everybody. They're charming and they're not narcissists. But whenever I see a lot of charm, I'm like, this doesn't feel that great. I'm going to investigate what this is. I'm very suspicious of charm because there's so many narcissists out there. And the empath is innocent a lot of times if they're not educated. And want to educate you so you're not just this one, here comes the big bad wolf, and you're like, hi, you're so cute.
Yes.
You have to be smarter than that. And
Yeah.
in this chapter, I outline what are the signs and symptoms of a narcissist and why are empaths attracted to them. No, I just want to say, if you've had a narcissistic parent, you might have been programmed to be attracted to narcissists because that's all you knew growing up. And so you may need to work with a therapist or a coach to undo those bonds with the narcissistic parent and not keep looking for resolution to the parental lack of love with your partner, as it will, the pattern will continue unless you break it.
And often these patterns are even multi-generational. So I'm gifting your book actually to a large part of my friends, and I'm so proud to be friends of them. I consider them all their cycle breakers, and they're doing the work. And obviously the work you do, Dr. Orloff, it's just tremendous. I'm so grateful for you and everything you put out into the world. You're bringing such healing. And lastly, I know our time is limited today. I'm so grateful you did make time today. I would like to know your perspective on how you see the role of empathy evolving in a world that's increasingly driven by technology and artificial intelligence. What unique contributions can empaths make in this tech-centric future?
Empaths, I know empaths who are tech geniuses.
Mm-hmm.
You can deal with anything if you have a passion for it. And so empaths can have a passion for it, but at the same time, they have to practice self-care and recognize the threats that are in the environment. Perhaps the people are intellectuals and not coming from their heart so much, but that's a stereotype. There are good people everywhere, and you want to find them. And you want to look, I always, if I go to a party, I look for somebody in the corner because I know I'm going to like them. Somebody who's alone in a corner.
Yeah.
And empaths have leadership roles. There's a chapter on empathic leadership in The Genius of Empathy. And empaths, I see empaths as being in managerial roles, in running companies, and maybe working in groups instead of having one president of the United States. I've always fantasized about this, having a group rule, which I think is much better than one person. It's just a problem with one person. But to be empathic and to really determine what your values are now, because at this day and time, you need to know what you believe in. Now, do you really believe in love? Do you really believe in having empathy for yourself and your spouse and your children without being a doormat? I'm not saying you're a doormat. I'm saying you have empathy for them. And for some reason, people connect being a doormat with having empathy, because you have to develop skills, and you develop boundary setting and self-care and meditation. You develop skills to come back to yourself. And that's how you can enjoy being an empath. And I want to end this with a sense of joy and hope. And I love being an empath. I love the connection I feel to life and to the flowers and the butterflies and the ocean and the redwoods and to you and to everyone, really, if I could, on my best state. And I love that. I love connecting deeply. I don't like being shut off or stuck in the head and be a disembodied head, although I really value the intellect a lot. And you need to balance the intellect with your heart. And so it's important to embody every aspect. I mean, I'm a psychiatrist. I was traditionally trained, and I'm an empath and an intuitive. So I include all that in my private practice, which I say that I still have some openings in that occasionally if people are interested in private sessions. And you have to define what's important to you and stick to it, no matter what's happening. The world's falling down around you. You have to stick to it. You have to be the bright light that can light others. No, it's just, that's how it works. But you have to have the confidence in yourself, which you can develop. And we can do this together. You don't want to do this alone. We want to do this as a community of people who value empathy and love and connection and the earth. As empaths are stewards of the earth because they connect to the earth. They're earth empaths. They understand the connection to the earth. It's not a matter of debate. Mm-hmm. They don't question the connection to humankind. It's not a matter of debate because you feel it. The kind of shocking thing is other people don't feel it. Some other people, they don't feel it. They don't get it. That's an eye opener, isn't it? But anyways, you want to focus on yourself and the connection to a community, even one person. Find one empath to be with. Empaths don't need a lot of people, but just in your meditations to feel all of us, we're all connected here. You're not alone. And the more you can refine your skills, your empathic skills, which is why I wrote The Genius of Empathy, the better off you're going to be because you're going to feel stronger and more equipped to handle various situations. And that's important.
Surely, Dr. Orloff, and the more equipped we are, the better we can also serve the whole human family and all in our specializations be stewards for this new beautiful world that I feel deeply in my heart is possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
Yeah. And Dr. Orloff, for people who'd like to learn more about you or connect with you, where can they do so?
My website is Judith Orloff, ORLOF.com. And I also have an empath support free online newsletter that you could sign up for, where I give tips and tricks on how to be an empowered empath. I have fun with it. And I give workshops that you could find on the site as well. So we could meet there.
Excellent. I'll make sure to have all of that put into the show notes. Dr. Orloff, what a pleasure. Thank you for coming onto the show today. I'm most grateful.
Thank you for inviting me.